Commander Jiho Kang stared at the screen in disbelief. The signal had appeared 3 hours ago, cutting through the endless static of deep space like a knife. It was clearly artificial, clearly intelligent, and clearly not human. He sat in the control room of Earth's deep space monitoring network, a massive facility buried beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Around him, dozens of technicians worked at their stations, their faces lit by the glow of monitors. The year was 2187, and humanity had spread across the solar system. They had built colonies on Mars, mining stations in the asteroid belt, and research outposts on the moons of Jupiter. But in all their exploration, they had never found a single trace of alien life. Until now. "Run it again," Jiho said to the technician beside him. The signal played through the speakers. It was not music or speech, but something else entirely. Mathematical patterns, repeating sequences, harmonic frequencies that seemed to carry meaning. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. This was it. "This was first contact. Get me Dr. Yuna Park," he said. "Tell her it's urgent." Dr. Yuna Park arrived 6 hours later on a suborbital flight from Seoul. She was the world's leading expert in xenolinguistics, a field that had been purely theoretical until this morning. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than most computers. She listened to the signal once, then again, then a third time. "It's a message," she said finally, "and I think it's asking for help." For the next 3 weeks, Yuna barely slept. She worked around the clock, running the signal through every pattern recognition algorithm humanity had developed. She compared it to whale songs, to ancient human languages, to mathematical constants. Slowly, piece by piece, the message revealed itself. When she finally decoded it, her hands shook as she typed the translation. The message was a distress call. It came from something called the Galactic Concordance, a federation of 847 species scattered across the Milky Way. For 75 years, they had been fighting a losing war against something called the Vorax, a parasitic species that consumed entire worlds. Every major civilization had fallen. Every defense had failed. The Concordance was down to 12 refugee worlds, and time was running out. The message had been sent to every corner of the galaxy, a desperate plea to anyone who might hear it. "Help us," it said. "Please, we are dying." Jiho read the translation 3 times. Then he picked up the phone and called the Secretary General of the United Earth Council. Within a week, the message was public. The entire world knew that humanity was not alone, and that the galaxy was in trouble. Debate raged across every nation. Some said it was a trap. Others said humanity should stay out of alien wars. Still others argued that if the distress call was real, then humanity had a moral duty to respond. Captain Hyun Lee was in the latter camp. He commanded the Earth Defense Fleet's newest ship, the EDF Horizon. He was a career officer, 42 years old, with a reputation for steady leadership and sound judgment. When the council called for volunteers to answer the distress call, he was the first to raise his hand. "This could be dangerous," the admiral told him. "We don't know what we're flying into." "I know," Hyun replied. "But if someone sent a distress call to Earth and nobody came, I'd never forgive them." "I won't be that person." The admiral nodded slowly. "Pick your crew carefully." Hyun chose the best. Lieutenant Taeyang Nam, a fighter pilot who had survived 3 combat missions against separatist forces in the outer colonies. Sergeant Minji Choi, a combat medic who had served in the worst war zones on Earth. Ensign Do-Yoon Seo, a tactical officer fresh from the academy but brilliant beyond his years. 7 ships prepared to launch. They would travel for 8 months at maximum faster than light speed to reach the coordinates in the distress call. It would be the longest journey any human had ever attempted. The night before departure, Taeyang sat in his quarters, staring at a photo of his family. His mother had cried when he told her he was going. His father had shaken his hand and told him to come back safe. His sister had hugged him and whispered, "Make us proud." He intended to do exactly that. Minji spent her last night on Earth in a small restaurant in Busan, eating her favorite meal and watching the ocean. She thought about all the people she had saved during her career, and all the ones she couldn't. This mission felt different. This wasn't about territory or politics. This was about survival. If the message was real, then billions of lives hung in the balance. Do-Hyun stayed up late running simulations. He calculated every possible scenario, every potential threat. The Vorax were an unknown factor. but he tried to model their behavior based on the limited information in the distress call. None of his simulations ended well. The Concordance was losing badly, and 7 human ships wouldn't change that, unless humanity had something the Concordance didn't. Launch day arrived. The 7 ships gathered in high orbit above Earth, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Millions watched from below as the vessels prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. In the Horizon's command center, Yoon sat in the captain's chair and looked at his crew. They were ready. Earth was ready. Whatever they found out there, humanity would face it together. All ships report ready, the communications officer said. Hyun took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first step onto the galactic stage. Engage FTL drives, he ordered. Let's go answer that call. The ships vanished in flashes of light, leaving Earth behind. They raced through the darkness between stars, carrying with them humanity's hope, courage, and determination. In 8 months, the galaxy would learn what Earth's children were made of. In 8 months, the Concordance would discover that their distress call had reached a world they never knew existed. In 8 months, the Vorax would face an enemy they could never have imagined. The Deathworlders were coming. 8 months of travel felt like both an eternity and an instant. The crew trained, studied what little they knew about the Concordance, and prepared for every possible scenario. When the ships finally dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the coordinates, they found themselves surrounded. Defense platforms appeared on every screen, weapons locked onto the human vessels. They were sleek and advanced, technology far beyond anything Earth had built. The platforms hummed with power, ready to fire. Shields up, Hyun shouted. All ships hold position. Do not return fire. His mind raced. They had come all this way to help, and now they were about to be destroyed. Then he had an idea. Broadcast the distress signal back to them, he ordered. The original message. Send it now. The communications officer's fingers flew across his console. The signal that had traveled all the way to Earth now echoed back into space. For 10 terrible seconds, nothing happened. Then slowly the weapons powered down. A new signal came through. This one was in broken English, clearly run through a translation program. Unknown vessels, identify. How you receive concordant signal. Hyun let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. This is Captain Hyun Lee of Earth. We received your distress call. We came to help. There was a long pause. Then, Earth? No Earth in Concordance database. What species you are? We're human. From the planet Earth in the Sol system. Another pause, even longer. Finally, escort ships coming. Follow them. Do not deviate. 6 elegant vessels appeared, their hulls covered in patterns that seemed to shift in the light. They guided the human ships toward a massive space station that hung in orbit around a blue planet. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had built. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. This was Sanctuary Prime, the last stronghold of the Galactic Concordance, when Hyun, Taeyang, Minji, and Doyeon stepped off their shuttle. They got their first look at alien life. The docking bay was filled with beings from dozens of species. Tall, thin creatures with skin like crystals, small furry beings with 6 limbs, floating entities that seemed to be made of light itself. All of them stopped and stared at the humans. An alien approached. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but made of what looked like living crystal, its body refracting light into rainbow patterns. It spoke through a small device that translated its words into English. I am Ambassador Velthus of the Crystal Communes. I lead what remains of the Concordance Council. The ambassador's voice was formal but carried an undertone of exhaustion. You say you are from Earth. We have no record of this world. Earth is in a remote arm of the galaxy, Hyun explained. We've only had space travel for about 200 years. Velthas's crystalline features seemed to sharpen. Only 200 years? And you traveled 8 months to answer our call? The ambassador paused. Come, we must speak. There is much you do not understand. They were led to a meeting room where other council members waited. As they walked, Minji noticed something odd. The aliens moved carefully, almost delicately. When one bumped into a wall, it made a sound of pain that seemed excessive for such a minor impact. In the meeting room, Velthas brought up a holographic display showing Earth. Your planet, the ambassador said slowly, is classified as a Class 12 death world. A what? Hyun asked. A death world. A planet so hostile that sapient life should not be able to evolve there. Your gravity is crushing. Your atmosphere is corrosive. Your weather patterns are catastrophic. Your planet is filled with predators and diseases. Your own biology should kill you. The humans looked at each other in confusion. Earth is just Earth, Taeyang said. It's normal to us. Velthus made a sound that the translator rendered as a sigh. That is what concerns us. You evolved in conditions that would kill most concordant species within days. You should not exist, yet here you are. Dr. Hana Song, the fleet's medical officer, spent the next several days examining concordant species. Her findings were shocking. Compared to humans, the aliens were incredibly fragile. Their bones were hollow and light. Their muscles were weak. A fall that would bruise a human could break an alien's limbs. Their immune systems had never faced serious diseases, having evolved on worlds that were essentially paradise compared to Earth. Meanwhile, Woojin Park, the chief engineer, studied Concordant's military technology. The weapons were sophisticated, using energy fields and particle beams. But the armor was minimal, more like ceremonial clothing than protection. When he asked why, a Concordance officer explained that serious physical injury was rare among civilized species. Wars had been outlawed thousands of years ago. Combat was theoretical, handled by automated systems, until the Vorax came. Velthus showed them recordings of Vorax attacks. The creatures were horrifying. Insectoid beings that moved in massive swarms. They adapted quickly, learning from every encounter. They consumed everything organic, leaving dead worlds behind. We have fought them for 75 years, Velthus explained. We have lost every major battle. Our weapons work, but our soldiers cannot endure the stress of combat. When they see the Vorax, many freeze in fear. When they are injured, they cannot continue fighting. Our civilians have never experienced violence. Our military was designed to prevent wars, not fight them. Do-hyun studied the tactical reports. The Concordants fought in organized formations, following rules and protocols. They evacuated injured soldiers immediately. They avoided collateral damage at all costs. They were civilized. You're losing because you're too civilized, Do-hyun said quietly. Velthus turned to him. Explain. The Vorax don't follow rules. They don't care about honor or mercy. You're fighting a war the way you think wars should be fought, not the way they actually are. And humans know better? Taeyang spoke up. Earth has always had wars. We've fought each other for thousands of years. We've learned how to survive in combat, how to push through pain and fear, how to adapt when plans fail. We've had to, because Earth is harsh and unforgiving. Velthus was silent for a long moment. Then the ambassador made a decision that would change everything. Show us, Velthus said. There is a defensive operation on the planet Kalen tomorrow. A small Vorax force is expected. Come with us. Show us how Deathworlders fight. Hyun nodded slowly. We'll show you. The planet Kalen was beautiful from orbit, covered in purple forests and silver seas. On the surface, it was a different story. The Concordants had built a defensive line along a ridge overlooking a valley where Vorax had been detected. Thousands of Concordant soldiers waited in carefully organized positions. Captain Hyun had brought 50 humans down in 3 shuttles. The Concordance commanders assigned them to the rear support area, far from expected combat. Hyun understood why. The aliens wanted to protect their new allies. They didn't yet understand that humans didn't need protecting. Taeyang stood with his squad checking their weapons. The rifles were human-made, projectile weapons that seemed primitive compared to Concordance energy weapons. But they were reliable and humans knew how to use them. Stay alert, he told his people. Something feels wrong about this. He was right. The Vorax attack came without warning. Instead of attacking from the valley as expected, they erupted from tunnels beneath the Concordance lines. Thousands of insectoid creatures, each the size of a large dog, with razor-sharp claws and acid that melted through armor. The Concordance formation collapsed immediately. Soldiers who had never experienced real combat panicked at the sight of the Vorax swarm. Some froze. Others ran. Within minutes, the defensive line was in chaos. All units fall back, the Concordance commander ordered. Evacuate to the secondary position. Taeyang watched thousands of alien soldiers retreating. He saw Vorax creatures chasing them down, killing dozens. He saw Concordant soldiers stumbling and falling, unable to continue after minor injuries. They're leaving wounded behind, Sergeant Soman Kim said beside him, her voice tight with anger. Taeyang made a decision. We're not retreating, sir? One of his squad members asked. You heard me? Weapons free. Engage the enemy. The 50 humans moved forward as thousands of aliens fled past them. It must have looked insane. But Taiyang had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He knew that panic was more deadly than any enemy. Someone had to hold the line. The Vorax saw them and charged. Hundreds of creatures surged toward the small human group. Taiyang opened fire, his rifle barking in 3-round bursts. Each burst dropped a Vorax. His squad spread into a defensive formation, their shots precise and controlled. The Vorax slammed into their position like a wave. Taiyang felt claws tear through his armor, felt acid burning his arm. The pain was intense, but he had been hurt before. He smashed the butt of his rifle into a Vorax's head, kicked another away, and kept firing. Beside him, Soman fought with brutal efficiency. She had grown up in a rough neighborhood in Seoul, had learned to fight before she learned to read. A Vorax leapt at her face. She caught it midair, broke its neck with her bare hands, and threw the corpse at its companions. The battle lasted 47 minutes. The humans held a choke point that should have been impossible to defend. They fought through injuries that would have incapacitated any concordant soldier. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When those broke, they used rocks in their bare hands. Private Yoonji Kwan was a sniper positioned on a broken wall. She had been shot twice, had acid burns across her back, and had lost her helmet. She held her position alone, taking careful shots, each one killing a Vorax. She killed 213 before reinforcements arrived. Dr. Minji Choi set up a medical station behind the human line. Wounded humans staggered to her, and she patched them up and sent them back to fight. She herself was poisoned by Vorax venom, a toxin that would kill most concordant species in seconds. She felt her throat swelling, her vision blurring, but she kept working. She used her own blood to create an antidote, injecting herself with shaking hands, and then used the same formula to save 3 concordant soldiers who had been left behind. When concordance reinforcements finally counterattacked with air support, they found the human position still held. The 50 humans were covered in blood, both their own and the Vorax's. They were injured, exhausted, and some were barely standing. But they hadn't retreated a single step. Around them lay the bodies of over 3,000 Vorax. Velthus arrived with the Concordance command staff. The ambassador walked through the battlefield in silence, stepping over Vorax corpses. The other aliens looked sick at the sight of so much violence. But Velthus walked directly to where Taiyang sat, being treated by Minji. "You held this position with 50 soldiers," Velthus said quietly. "Yes, sir," Taiyang replied. His arm was bandaged, his face bruised, but his eyes were clear. "Why didn't you retreat when ordered?" "Because we don't abandon people who need help. And because retreat without reason causes more deaths than standing your ground." Velthus looked at the blood-soaked human soldier. "You should be dead. Your injuries alone should have killed you." Taiyang shrugged. "I've had worse. Broke my leg in 3 places during a training exercise once. Still finished the course?" "Impossible," one of the Concordance officers said. "No one can function with a broken leg." "Humans can," Minji said, finishing her work on Taiyang's arm. She stood up, swaying slightly from the poison still in her system. "We evolved to survive injuries. Our bodies produce natural painkillers during combat. We can keep fighting when we should be dying." Another Concordance officer pointed at Soman, who was laughing with her squad despite having a broken rib and numerous cuts. "She's injured. Why is she happy?" "Because we won," Soman said simply. "We held the line." "That's worth celebrating." Velthus watched the humans for a long time. They were eating rations that Concordance scanners flagged as containing dangerous bacteria. They were joking about their injuries. They were already planning for the next fight. These creatures were nothing like any species the Concordance had ever encountered. They were violent, yes, but not cruel. They were tough beyond belief, but not invincible. They knew pain and fear, but those things didn't stop them. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. Ambassador Velthus made a call to the Concordance Council. The conversation was short. "We need to make humanity the military leaders of this war," Velthus said. "I know it sounds insane. I know they're newcomers. But I watched 50 of them do what 50,000 of us couldn't. If we want to survive, we need to learn from them." The council debated for 3 hours. When the vote came, it passed by a narrow margin. Captain Hyun Lee was promoted to Supreme Commander of all Concordance military operations. His first order was simple: send for more humans. Earth's response was immediate. Millions volunteered. The message was clear. The Deathworlders were no longer just coming. They had arrived, and they were ready to teach the galaxy how to fight back. 3 months after the Battle of Terminus Ridge, 50,000 humans arrived in the refuge cluster. They came on massive transport ships, bringing with them weapons, training equipment, and a determination that shocked the Concordants. These were volunteers, people who left their families and homes to help strangers they had never met. General Jiwoo Han stepped off the lead transport and immediately took command. She was 50 years old, a veteran of Earth's worst conflicts with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She shook hands with Captain Hyun, who was now Supreme Commander but still seemed uncomfortable with the title. "What's our situation?" she asked. "We're holding 12 worlds, but barely," Hyun replied. "The Vorax are regrouping. We have maybe 6 months before they push again. We need to train the Concordance forces before then." Jiwoo nodded. "Then we don't have time to waste." She divided the human forces into training cadres. Each group would work with different concordant species, teaching them what humans called combat readiness. Lieutenant Aaron Yu took charge of one training group on Sanctuary Prime. Her students were from the winged clans, bird-like aliens with hollow bones and incredible eyesight. They were fast and agile but fragile. "Today we learn about cover," Aaron announced. "When Vorax shoot at you, you hide behind something solid." One of the students raised a wing. "But the combat manual says that taking cover shows fear and reduces unit morale." Aaron stared at the alien. "Your manual is going to get you killed. Cover keeps you alive. Dead soldiers have zero morale." She spent weeks drilling basic concepts that humans took for granted. Duck when something explodes. Don't stand in the open. Don't assume the enemy will fight fairly. Use terrain to your advantage. The Concordant students struggled with these ideas. Their civilizations had eliminated warfare thousands of years ago. Combat was something they studied in theory, not practice. The concept of someone actively trying to kill them was foreign and terrifying, but slowly they learned. Captain Sung-Ho Cho worked with the Psychological Warfare Division. He was an expert in something the Concordants had never considered: fear as a weapon. "The Vorax are driven by instinct," he explained to a group of Concordance officers, "but instinct can be confused. If we're unpredictable, if we do things they don't expect, we can make them hesitate. Hesitation in combat means death." He taught them about feints, false retreats, and ambushes. He showed them how to use terrain to create killing zones. He explained that sometimes the best defense was a terrifying offense. The Concordants found these concepts disturbing. They asked if such tactics were ethical. Sung-Ho's answer was blunt. "Ethics are for peacetime. Right now you're fighting for survival. You can be ethical after you win." Meanwhile, Dr. Yuna Park made a breakthrough in the research division. She had been studying Vorax communication patterns, trying to understand how their hive mind worked. What she discovered changed everything. "They're not mindless," she told the command staff. "They're calculating. They learn from every battle, adapt their tactics. They've been treating the Concordants like a puzzle to solve, but they've never encountered humans before." "Why does that matter?" Felthus asked. "Because humans don't fit any pattern they know. We don't retreat when we should. We don't die when we should. We do things that make no logical sense. It confuses them." Yuna pulled up data from recent skirmishes. "Look at this. In battles where humans are present, Vorax casualties are triple what they should be. Not because we're better fighters, but because we're unpredictable. They can't adapt to us." Do-Hyun Seo had been working on something even more ambitious. He presented his plan to the entire command staff. "We've been fighting defensively," he said, "waiting for the Vorax to attack, then trying to hold them off. But defense isn't working. We need to attack." "Attack where?" Hyun asked. "Their core worlds. The Vorax have 6 hive planets where they breed and gather resources. If we hit those worlds, we can cripple their ability to reproduce." The room went silent. A Concordance admiral spoke up. "That would be genocide. We would be wiping out an entire species." "They're wiping out the entire galaxy," Do-Hyun replied. "This isn't about revenge. It's about survival. We either destroy them or they destroy us. There is no middle ground." The debate raged for days. The Concordants had laws against genocide, rules that had stood for millennia. But those laws were written in times of peace, by people who never imagined facing extinction. Ambassador Veltas listened to all the arguments. Finally, the ambassador stood and addressed the council. "We called for help because we were dying. Humanity answered that call. They came across the galaxy to save strangers. They bled for us. They taught us how to fight. And now they're telling us what needs to be done. Velthus paused. I have seen humans fight. I have seen what they're capable of. They don't enjoy killing, but they understand that sometimes to protect what you love, you must do terrible things. The question isn't whether we should do this. The question is whether we want to survive. The vote was close. Many council members abstained, unable to support genocide even to save themselves. But in the end, Operation Homecoming was approved. 50,000 humans and 12 million concordant soldiers began preparing for the largest military operation in galactic history. They would strike at all 6 hive worlds simultaneously, overwhelming the Vorax before they could adapt. General Jiwoo Han stood before the assembled forces and gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. You are not warriors by nature, she said. Most of you come from species that left violence behind long ago. You have been asked to become something you never wanted to be. I know that's hard. I know it goes against everything your cultures teach you. She paused, looking across the vast assembly. But I also know this. You answered the call when humanity came. You trained when training was painful. You learned when learning was difficult. You are here now ready to fight because you love your families and your homes more than you fear death. That makes you warriors. Not because you're good at killing, but because you're willing to protect what matters. She raised her fist. We fight not because we want to, but because we must. We fight not for glory, but for survival. We fight so that when this is over, our children can live in peace, and we will win. The roar that followed shook the station. 50,000 human voices and 12 million alien voices united in purpose. The fleet assembled. Ships from 847 species, each painted with the symbol of the concordance and the new emblem of humanity. A blue and green planet, beautiful and deadly. In 7 days they would launch. In 7 days the galaxy would strike back. The Deathworlders were leading the charge, and the universe would never be the same. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Vorax core systems. 6 massive battle groups, each targeting one of the hive worlds. Humans led every assault, with concordance forces following tactics they had spent months learning. General Jiwoo Han commanded from the flagship Indomitable. She watched the tactical displays showing all 6 battlefields at once. This was it. Everything they had trained for, everything they had sacrificed came down to the next few hours. All groups, this is Han. Execute Operation Homecoming. Show them what we've learned. Taeyang Nam led the fighter squadrons toward Vorax Prime, the largest hive world. His squadron of 50 human pilots flew in formations that made Concordance commanders nervous. They pulled maneuvers that put 8 times Earth's gravity on their bodies, forces that would crush most species. But humans had evolved under crushing gravity. This was natural to them. Vorax fighters incoming, his sensor officer reported. 3,000 contacts. Good odds, Taeyang said calmly. That's only 60 each. Break and attack. The human fighters scattered, each pilot becoming an independent hunter. They didn't follow formations or protocols. They flew by instinct, reacting faster than any computer. Vorax fighters were fast and numerous, but they followed predictable patterns. Humans didn't. Within 20 minutes, the Vorax fighter screen was broken. Taeyang's squadron lost 8 pilots, but they cleared the way for the capital ships. On the ground, Sergeant Somin Kim led a mixed unit of humans and concordant soldiers. They had landed on Hive World 3, tasked with destroying Vorax breeding chambers. Her unit moved through twisted alien landscape, following maps Do-Yun had created from intelligence data. A concordant soldier stumbled, exhausted. 6 months ago, he would have stopped, unable to continue. Now he caught himself, checked his weapon, and kept moving. The training had worked. Contact front, someone shouted. Vorax warriors poured from a tunnel. Salmon's unit took cover behind rocks and opened fire. The concordant soldiers fought with a discipline they never had before. They didn't panic. They didn't freeze. They aimed, fired, and reloaded just like Aaron had taught them. The Vorax charged their position. It was a terrifying sight. Thousands of insectoid creatures moving as one, but Soman had fought through worse on Kalen. Hold your ground, she shouted. They're trying to scare us. Don't let them. Her unit held. When the Vorax closed to melee range, the humans met them with knives and rifle butts. The concordant soldiers, inspired by their human companions, stood their ground too. They were fragile compared to humans, but they were no longer the frightened civilians they had been 6 months ago. In orbit, Dr. Hana Song supervised a weapon that would have been unthinkable before humans arrived. She had discovered that Vorax biology, while adaptable, was vulnerable to Earth pathogens. Human diseases could infect and kill them. The Concordance was horrified when she proposed weaponizing this. Biological warfare had been banned for thousands of years, but as Sungho had said, ethics were for peacetime. Deploying bioweapons, Hana said quietly, her finger hovering over the button. She thought about all the worlds the Vorax had consumed, all the billions who had died. She pressed the button. Missiles streaked toward the hive world's atmosphere. They detonated high above the surface, releasing clouds of engineered bacteria. The pathogens spread on the wind, invisible and deadly. Within hours, Vorax across the planet began dying. It was brutal. It was effective. It was necessary. On Vorax Prime, Captain Hyun Lee led the final assault. The human and Concordance forces had fought their way to the planet's core, where the Vorax Queen resided. The chamber was vast, filled with eggs and worker Vorax, and at the center, the Queen herself. She was enormous, 10 times larger than any Vorax they had seen. Her intelligence was visible in her eyes. She watched the invaders approach, and when she spoke, her words came through in broken English. "Why you attack us? We only survive." "Like you." Hyun stopped. For a moment, he hesitated. The Queen was right. The Vorax were just trying to survive, same as everyone else. But then he thought about the 12 worlds barely holding on. The billions already dead. The children who would die if the Vorax weren't stopped. "You survive by killing everyone else," Hyun said. "We can't let that continue. We can share galaxy," the Queen said. "We can coexist." It was tempting. But Admiral Jiho Kang, monitoring from orbit, had studied history. He knew this tactic. Predators didn't negotiate. They stalled. "It's a trap," Jiho said through the communication link. "She's calling for reinforcements. I'm reading massive Vorax movement heading to your position." Hyun's jaw tightened. The Queen wasn't seeking peace. She was buying time. "I'm sorry," Hyun said, and he meant it. "But we can't take that risk." He gave the signal. Orbital bombardment rained down on Vorax Prime. The planet's surface turned to fire. The Queen's last scream echoed through the chamber as everything turned to ash. Across all 6 hive worlds, the attack succeeded. The Vorax fell to human tactics, human weapons, and human determination. Billions of Vorax died. Their hive worlds were sterilized, leaving nothing but dead rock. It was the greatest military victory in galactic history. It was also genocide. 3 months later, the war was over. The remaining Vorax scattered throughout the galaxy were hunted down by mixed human Concordance forces. The species was extinct. The Concordance struggled with what they had done. They had always seen themselves as civilized, above such brutality. Now they had blood on their hands. Some species celebrated humanity as saviors. Others called them monsters. Most understood they were both. Captain Hyun Lee retired to Earth. He bought a small house near the ocean and spent his days staring at the waves. He had saved the galaxy, but the cost haunted him. Every night he dreamed of the Vorax Queen's final moments. Dr. Yuna Park stayed with the Concordance. She helped them rebuild, using her knowledge to restore worlds damaged by the war. She never forgot that it was her decoding of the distress call that started everything. General Jiwoo Han accepted command of the new Concordance Defense Force. Someone had to protect the galaxy, and no one understood warfare better than humans. She trained soldiers from every species, preparing them for threats that might come. Taeyang, Minji, Somin, and thousands of other humans remained with the Concordance. They had formed bonds with the aliens they fought beside. They had found a purpose larger than themselves. Earth was granted membership in the Concordance and territory in 7 systems. The planet became known throughout the galaxy as the death world that saved us. The phrase carried both gratitude and fear. On the 1-year anniversary of humanity's arrival, Ambassador Velthas gave a speech that was broadcast across all Concordance worlds. "Humanity taught us that survival requires sacrifice," Velthas said. "They showed us that sometimes to protect what we love, we must become what we fear. They saved us not because we deserved it, but because when they heard someone calling for help, they answered. That is what heroes do." The ambassador paused. "We cannot forget what was done. We cannot pretend the Vorax extinction was anything but terrible. But we are alive because of it. Our children will grow up in peace because 50,000 humans were willing to do what we could not. We owe them everything. We owe them the truth of what they are, both our salvation and our reminder of what survival costs. That night, a new signal was detected. It came from beyond the galactic rim, faint and desperate. Another distress call. Another species in danger. The Concordance Council gathered to discuss the signal. The debate was brief. They knew what had to be done. They called Earth. General Ji Woo Han received the message in her office. She read it twice, then stood and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone was dying. Someone needed help. She picked up her communication device and sent a message to every human serving in the Concordance. New mission. Pack your gear. Within days, ships began gathering. Human vessels and Concordance ships united under one banner. They would answer the call just as they had before. The Deathworlders were coming again. And the galaxy was safer because of it.